Welcome to Intentional Divorce Insights. I'm Leah Hadley, certified divorce financial analyst, accredited financial counselor, and the founder of Intentional Divorce Solutions. I'll be your guide through the complexities of divorce, finance, and emotional wellness. Join me as we uncover practical tips and empowering insights to help you navigate your divorce with clarity and intention.
Hi there, and welcome back to Intentional Divorce Insights. I am so happy that you are here with us today. I had the pleasure of meeting a really special person just a few weeks ago. And when I was talking to her, I could not wait to get her on the podcast because Kristin Hadley is an animal communicator. And I bet that there are a lot of you who don't have any idea what that is. So we're going to talk about what that is and how Kristin got into this work. But here is the thing that I see over and over and over again. As families are going through this transitional period, it impacts the pets in a lot of different ways. And some of those behaviors can feel frustrating. Some of them might scare you a little bit if your pet seems like they're under the weather. And I think Kristin can really bring some light to what's going on in the household when we're having this transition and some things that you can really do to support your furry family members. So Kristin, thank you so much for being here with me today. I have to tell you guys, Kristin led, honestly, it was very brief. I don't know. Was it like a 20-minute meditation or a half an hour? It was very short. And just this very limited experience I had doing this meditation experience with Kristin actually changed the way I interact with animals now, like going forward completely. Like I was just last week at the beach interacting with the birds on the beach. Like it just changed the way that I see animals and the way I interact with them. So Kristin, first of all, thank you so much for that experience. And thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Leah. Oh, I'm so happy to be here. This is fantastic. And I love that experience that you shared about just, it opens us up, right?
That's right.
Just becoming aware
That's
of
right.
our animal companions, friends, wild animals in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kristin, what is an animal communicator and how did you get into this work?
Sure. An animal communicator is there is a profession. I certify people to become professional animal communicators. And we telepathically communicate with animals to help their people understand what the animal is going through. And animals are sentient beings. I consider them my family members, the ones who live with me. They are companions. They're our partners in life. And they have a lot to share with us. They have emotions. They have relationships with each member of our human families and the other animals in the family. And what I do as a professional animal communicator is I tune in with the animal around topics that are important to both the person and the animal. And I feel the animal's perspective and viewpoints and feelings about the topic. And it's very enlightening. It's really enlightening. And the people who come to me feel that their animals are really significant members of their family and all that they offer and with all that they can offer. They offer new perspectives. So I help to make that clear. And some people say it's being a voice for the animals. I consider it being a way that a translation for the animals and what they're experiencing.
So, Kristin, that's amazing that you have the skill to really translate what our animal companions are trying to share with us. How did you learn how to do this? How did you get into this work?
I've always loved animals, always considered them my friends. And so it was kind of a natural thing for me when I heard 35, 40 years ago that there was someone doing this work and you could learn more about it. I was like, oh my gosh, I am on this, right? And it was very validating. And so I took a course from Penelope Smith. And my horse at the time, he and I had great communication. And I was just really embodying this being an animal communicator. And he said to me, you need to do this for other people. And I was like, don't think I can do that. And he said, no, you really need to. Like, he showed me I really needed to do this. This was, or when you're not on your path, he said, you have to follow your path. This is your passion. If you don't, it's going to cause problems. And he showed me kind of cells morphing and dissonance, and I said, okay. And so I stepped into it, and I absolutely love it. It's the most fulfilling work that I can ever imagine doing. And it's not just work. It's really, I call it living an interspecies lifestyle, like where the animals are a part. We can't separate them out. So, that's how I started. And then I just started putting it out there to people. And those who understand animals in this way, they recognize and they come. So, yeah.
That's so beautiful. So for our audience, a lot of folks are either considering a divorce, they're in the middle of a divorce, maybe they're recently divorced. Unfortunately, when people are going through a divorce, typically animals are treated as assets. But we all who have close relationships with our furry family members look at them differently, right? And so even though sort of negotiations around divorce may not support that, as human beings, we have the opportunity to be present and to really think about how our decisions are impacting the animals in our households. And so, Kristin, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about kind of what goes on for animals when families are restructuring and some of the things that people may see.
Yeah, great question. It's such an important aspect of any kind of change in a family, right? To be aware of is the animal friends, the animal family members. So animals feel, they have their own feelings, they have their own experiences, they have their own perceptions, and they're always communicating telepathically with us, which means feeling over distance. And so while they have their own experiences as families are adjusting, if they're not clear about what's happening, it can create a lot of confusion. So that's the first thing, is that when things start changing and family members start feeling uncomfortable feelings like frustration, anger, fear, the animals can feel what we feel, and they're not quite sure what that's all about. So even before a family starts talking openly about it, when two parents to start recognizing that something's changing, it's really important to be clear with the animals about what you're feeling. Yes, things are changing. Yes, I am feeling these. Animals help us in this way. It's kind of reflected throughout all of this body of work. They help us get really clear about what we're feeling. So your animals can also be an asset to you in terms of being really honest with yourself through this process, when you're honest because of you want them to understand. So that's the first thing. They're feeling it even before you think they're feeling it. And then, I'll speak to animals have very specific and deep relationships with different members of the family. Sometimes what they show on the outward side, sometimes what they express, whether it's being affectionate or wanting to be really close to one family member physically, or showing excitement toward their family, that doesn't mean that they don't have feelings for another family member. And I often hear people and I work with people who are going through family transitions. They're getting divorced. They're, they say, oh, well, he's really my dog. He's not really interested in my husband, or he's, really my son's cat, and he doesn't care about the rest of us. Like, oh my gosh, no. There could be 1,000 reasons why he's really connected physically with one of your family members and not demonstrating that with others. But it's important to know why for them. So that's something to be aware of. And what you might see is animals becoming despondent. You might see them, acting out with behaviors. You might see them doing things that they have never done before, whether it's inappropriate. You might see, just like in people, you might see overexpression of emotions that we might consider excited, right down to depression. You might see them go off their food. You might notice nothing at all, because just because they're not demonstrating it doesn't mean that they're not feeling it, right? We as humans, we have articulators and facial expressions and this wonderful thing called voice, right, that can express when done well, right? Our emotions. And, animals just don't have that physical anatomy to enable them to do that. It does not mean that they're not feeling it, and they feel very deeply. And this is important too, Leah. Sometimes what happens is people assume that they know what their animal is feeling, and that can be a projection of their own worry, fear, discomfort, sadness, grief, anger, their own feelings, or they can just assign a feeling to an animal. And then, I know how I feel when someone says, oh, you're feeling this, or you're thinking this. I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. Don't feel for me. And very often that's what happens to animals. And what that does is it kind of taps them down and adds layers to the uncomfortableness that they might already be feeling. So
that's such an interesting point. Yeah, because so often, right, we are all like in the thick of all of these things that might be triggering us. And so that projection would be very natural, right? I mean, that wouldn't be something like that's a natural response, but being aware of it and like bringing some mindfulness to it, we may find that what we're seeing is actually something different, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think this too, I always say the animals kind of lead us on, not even kind of, animals lead us on a path of awareness. And, some families are really wonderful. And I'm sure, the families you work with, they're looking for the right kind of support, in getting their kids the therapy, getting themselves the therapy to work through this emotionally. And animals too benefit from that. If it's just getting their feelings out, that's where my role comes in, and sometimes the animals are the ones demonstrating the behavior that allows the person in charge, the mom, the dad, to say, hey, something's off. And then the animal having the problem opens people up to, hey, my kid might also not be showing me how he's feeling. Even though he seems like he's got it all together, doesn't mean he doesn't have his own perceptions. And maybe exploring that a little more is really important, so in that way, it's just kind of animals are always showing us, kind of opening the side door or a new window to our own well-being and new possibilities. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense. And it's really interesting because I think about how many of us, I think there are a lot of misconceptions around divorce. And one of the most common ones is it's a process that can take a long time. Like a lot of times people think like, hey, I've decided to divorce. I'm going to do this and it's going to be done. But a lot of times for some people, unfortunately, it can even extend for years in terms of that process, right? And so what do we do just to get through it? Is just kind of put our head down and maybe not be as mindful or paying as much attention to some of those things that are going on around us. And I think that's such a beautiful example of how your animals may bring some things up that maybe you were trying to avoid, right? But are really important in terms of making sure that even just you're taking good care of yourself, right? Not let alone your family and your animals and everything else. But sometimes when we really are avoiding what's happening, we are starting to let those things go that become really important down the road, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love that frame that you just put that in. It's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know, Kristin, I've seen for a lot of folks over the years, some pretty challenging behaviors that have come up with their pets as things are changing in the home. And sometimes they're behaviors like you talked about before. Sometimes might be behaviors that lend themselves to thinking that maybe there's a health issue for the animal or could create a health issue for the animal, right? What do you recommend, Kristin, for people who are seeing some of these things in their animals and may not necessarily know how to interpret it?
Those first, I would say, be curious about exploring why with your animal, right? And that's when you would call an animal communicator, a professional animal communicator. And I feel looking at, just slowing down, first of all, that's the first thing, is slowing down. Sometimes when people are going through divorce, hard things, we just want to get through it, like you just said. So slowing down and actually reflecting on, what am I witnessing? What am I seeing? when did it start, and being open to just why, right? Just being open to why without having to define why or come up with your own reason or fix it right away. Like we can't fix it until we really know why, really know what it's about. And the reasons that animals will tell you are so varied, right? Like, so you can't be sure if it's a medical issue, if it's an emotional issue. So the first thing that you can do all on your own is to slow down, start reflecting on when did this start, and writing those things down, getting it out of your head, especially when you're going through a stressful period, and onto paper, getting out of your head and onto paper. It's a different reflection then, right? The other thing, this is really important, and something that is just a little bit of a tweak, but when we refer to our animal family members as he and she or they, we notice them differently. We receive them differently. We perceive them differently as being whole beings, right? Oftentimes I hear people say, it, my dog, it does this, or my cat, it does this. And it's like, whoa, we don't say my daughter, it does this. And what that does, it's a real simple thing, is it changes how we think about them. It opens us up to new potential understanding about what could be possible for them. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. It's just meeting people exactly where they're at. And that very small tweak just changes that interaction. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think too, Leah, you mentioned in the beginning, like very often animals are considered assets. Is that the word that you, assets or property, or you right?
From a negotiation standpoint, correct. Yes.
Yes. And when this is another piece about the language and kind of the language of awareness, is I say our animal friends or my animal family members, and that might be something that for your people and who you like, they are family members. And when we talk about them as pets or my animals, that idea, right? That concept is like, they are a thing over here. But when we say your animal family members, my animal family, it changes it. The awareness shifts. And I feel like that is also just such an important part of the reason why I do my work, is to bring that concept of really receiving animals, understanding animals as whole beings and who they are. It's part of it. But I think that could ease for the people who really feel this way about their animals who come to you. It could help them to shift their perspective a little bit and start to understand on their own, without the help of an animal communicator, but on their own, what else could be the reason for, or what's going on really for their animal when they view them as a being, not an it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we think about how divorces get negotiated, and the different areas that you need to come to resolution on, we have very different conversations around creating a parenting plan that's going to be fluid and is going to address the changing needs of your children over the years versus the stuff, right? And so just like your kids have changing needs over the years, so do your animals, right? Certainly, we in our family tend to adopt a little older animals because I'm not a puppy person. I love to go and play with puppies, but, carrying and raising a puppy is not my speed. But I know that about myself, right? And so I make decisions based on knowing that, I am a fabulous person to take a dog into their senior years, but I'm not the person who's going to be doing like the initial training and all of that, right? But it's the point is how we frame it, how we think about it, how we talk about it as part of the negotiation process. And thinking about, you always have the courts that'll come in and kind of different professionals that might get involved and say, well, what is in the best interest of the child truly? Like what is going to best serve their needs? We don't have that necessarily that same conversation around making sure that our animals are cared for. But if we've taken on that responsibility and brought these animals into our families, it's a conversation that's important to have, right?
And what a beautiful gift to your clients that you have that perspective, as you lead them through your part of their process, and are their guide. What a gift that you bring that for them,
I appreciate that. But I also know that I need people like you, Kristin, because while I absolutely think about animals that way, I don't get to communicate with them in the same way that you do. Although maybe one of these days I'll do some of your training and I'll learn how to, which would be amazing. But that is something really special that Kristin does. And that is something I want you guys to be aware of. If this is a skill that you want to develop, it's a skill that she helps people develop. And you don't have to want to go out and, do this for other people, even if you just want to do it for your own for yourself. Yeah, I think that it's amazing, amazing work that allows us to feel closer to the world, not just to our own animals, but even like I was sharing before, that very short experience that I had with Kristin really changed the way I'm interacting with my environment now in such a meaningful and powerful way. And so just having the opportunity to learn that there are different ways of communicating and thinking about these things. And I just have witnessed so many pets over the years struggle through the divorce process, and especially post-divorce, where people don't necessarily think about the roles that we play within our animals' lives, and are we making sure that they are supported completely going forward?
Yes. Oh my gosh, so true. I so often I've heard people say, he's never going to get that dog, or she's never going to have that cat. It's like, just because you wouldn't doesn't mean that animal doesn't. So
Right.
Really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kristin, I was sharing with Kristin before we got on, when she goes online and she shares her gifts online, you can feel her beautiful energy coming like right through the computer. And Kristin has a Facebook group that you can actually join. There's no cost to join. It's a great way to connect with her, learn about the work she does, maybe pick her brain a little bit. Kristin, where can people find that?
Yes, on Facebook, and the title of the name of the group is Animal Communication Success with Kristin Hadley.
Fantastic.
I do training.
Include it in the show notes for sure. Go ahead, Kristin.
Great. Oh, no. I was just going to say, I do trainings there. I answer questions there. I teach there, and it's wonderful. This is the other piece. Not everybody is aware of animals in this way. Not everybody is awake to this yet. My goal is that everyone will be. And to be around people who also feel this way about the animals in their lives and the animals on our planet, it's like coming home. It's like, plugging a piece of us back in. And Leah, you and I felt that when we got together,
Absolutely.
And you had such a beautiful experience there I was like, you were connecting with the deer. And I mean, it was beautiful. But there's really just something so joyful about coming together with people who also feel the same around these beautiful beings in our lives. So you're welcome to come. I'd love to have you there. And
Fantastic. So please take advantage of that. Join me in the Facebook group with Kristin. And Kristin, is there any final words you want to share with our audience?
I think the final thing I would just say and just want to give everyone is everyone is telepathic. Everyone has the ability to understand animals. And just knowing that gives you permission to, I want to give you permission. I want to give you permission to be open to what else your animal might be feeling, other than what you're thinking, what else they might be feeling, what they might be needing, what they might want you to know. And that can be really empowering when it's often they're our best friends when you're going through a really hard time. So.
That's such a good point, right? They really can be that emotional support that so many of us need during these difficult challenges. Absolutely. Kristin, thank you so much for sharing your heart and your wisdom with us. I so appreciate you being here. And for our audience, thank you for being here, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for joining me on Intentional Divorce Insights. It's a privilege to share this time with you. I hope each episode offers valuable guidance to navigate your journey. If you find our content helpful, please leave a review to help others discover the benefits of intentional decision-making in divorce. Until next time, take care and continue to embrace your path with intention.